Legal Connect podcast. Super excited to have you guys today. We have a amazing guest, right? Who's not just a lawyer, but who's overall and cool and cool dude who I love to hang out and talk about, right? But we will talk a lot about being a lawyer, what he practices, what he does, and everything. Patrick, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Ali, for having me. I think we'll have a fun time as we always do. The Bearded Dudes podcast
Yeah.
is going to be the future thing that we do. So, yeah, my name is Patino. I'm a small firm attorney. We are a US based firm with three physical locations and four attorneys. So we largely are what's considered a distributed law firm. My practice is primarily focused on the areas of consumer and business bankruptcy, representing both debtors and creditors. I have not met a client in person for over 3 years, so I run a exclusively virtual practice. Um, we utilize a ton of technology and automation to facilitate that. And it's embedded largely in my practice as part of the intake process. We even ask people things like, do you know how to send things as PDF?
Mm.
And this is kind of seems so simple, but is very revolutionary in that we're trying to retain clients
Mhm.
that will be able to engage successfully in our workflows.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Generally you find that AI, automation, tech is something that lawyers are generally afraid of, and you have fully embraced it in your firm. First, what is the rationale behind it? What led you to embrace technology fully? And what very interesting thing you said is you haven't met a client in last 3 years, right? Uh, Coming from a technology background myself too, right? Remote working is very common and mainstream, whereas in legal industry, because of COVID, that took off, took off during COVID. But now we see that a lot of firms are going back in person, right? Where you continue to operate in this remote environment. So first, talk about it and why you choose to do so, right? And why did you embrace technology?
Sure. So embracing technology is a large part is driven by my practice area incentivizes efficiency. So bankruptcy is largely flat fee. It has been that way traditionally for a very long time. It's always been considered an outlier practice area in
Mhm.
that way because there is the incentive to perform the work in the least amount of physical time possible
Okay.
while still obviously providing the value to the client and meeting all the requirements in order to make it through the bankruptcy process. So, for us bankruptcy attorneys who do flat fee, it's all about how can we be as efficient as possible to perform the job.
Okay.
And so I'm always trying to spend the least amount of time possible
Mhm.
to drive value, both for the firm itself and for the client, right? How do we make this an enjoyable experience, even though you're going through a hard time? Well, technology helps facilitate that ease,
Yeah.
right? Um, and so that's really a big part of it. The other is remaining lean as a law firm. Traditionally, you would hire, right? As you scale, you would hire an intake specialist. You would hire more what is considered non billable legal support staff. Well, in our firm, intake is largely automated, it's form driven, it's logic based upon how you fill out forms, is based upon what goes to the next step, and so on and so forth. That in a traditional sense, you'd have to have someone manually input data or manually go physically open a physical file for
Mhm.
every single case. Um, so that's kind of what's driven the technology. The staying remote really comes down to in the bankruptcy practice, it is beneficial to the client.
Mm.
People don't want to drive to an office, take off work, find childcare,
Yeah.
or if they're disabled, leaving where they live is a challenge or is prohibitive.
Mhm.
And so I like to tell people, like, you can do the entire bankruptcy process from your couch. Like, you don't even have to leave home.
You don't have to leave home. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and it aligns with what I value most out of life, which is showing up like this. Working like this is how I feel most comfortable,
Ah,
and not having to take time to commute or spend money on, you know, very professional attire.
yeah.
It takes away from the things I value most, which is, time with my family or
Yeah.
time to pursue other things outside of the law.
Yeah. You know what? I think that the simple fact is, t-shirt is way more comfortable than wearing a suit all day. So,
Yeah, and clients have come to kind of gravitate towards
yeah.
or appreciate or message. Like, if you look at our Google reviews, a lot of the feedback we're getting is that, Patrick is an authentic dude.
Yeah. So,
That's a brand differentiator. I'm
so,
an
so,
authentic dude.
so that leads me to this question, right, Patrick?
Yeah.
Authenticity, right?
Hmm.
Um, Generally, I mean, there's in a law we call it like generally it's called like role playing, right? You
Sure.
you you become a lawyer, you're a different kind of a dude. You come home, you're a different kind of dude. You're in front of your friends, you're a different dude.
Yep.
In front of your associates, you're a different dude, right?
Yep.
So, and you said one thing very important, like authenticity, right? So
Hmm.
so talk about authenticity correlation with personal brand and correlation with like how you build meaningful and in fact deeper relationship with your client, because you're not wearing this like curtain of who you're not.
Exactly. So, I just got done reading a book by Heidi Brown called The Introverted Attorney, I think, or Introverted Lawyer. And um, I'm what is considered an outgoing introvert.
Hmm.
Um, I like interacting with people, but deep down inside, what energizes me is alone time, deep
Yeah.
thinking, meditation, reflection, introspection. And one of the main drivers of being, or one of the main attributes of being an introvert, is the value of being authentic. We don't like acting like something we're not.
Mhm.
It creates a disconnect. It makes us really uncomfortable. We don't like when people are disingenuous. We don't like the fake it till you make it. We don't like being forced to be disingenuous.
Yeah.
And so I've just really leaned into, this is me. This is how I show up. This is how I talk. Now, my practice is largely driven by interacting with everyday people. Um, I'm not in a courtroom, right? That would dictate how I look,
Hmm.
but not who I am, and that's a distinction. Is that I have embraced who I am and have gotten comfortable with that, and sometimes that means I wear a backwards hat, right?
Hmm.
I'm not gonna do this in court, right? I'm not gonna go that far, but how I show up and how I am present in that moment
Yeah.
um, is going to be me. And so when it comes to authenticity, it's really about embracing who you are,
Hmm.
not trying to fit in for the sake of fitting in.
Yeah.
The legal profession doesn't make that easy.
Doesn't make that easy. Okay.
We love differentiations as attorneys. We like trying to put things into certain boxes. We like rules.
Mhm.
And I've really just embraced, like, what if we break every rule?
Yeah.
What if we are disruptors and take the box, break it, and try to put it back together? And so from a personal brand standpoint, you know, if I or my firm looked like every other law firm, it's
It's
boring.
boring. Yeah. It's boring.
Right? I mean, then it's just all bland, right? It all, I mean, what sets you apart other than who you are?
Excellent. Like an excellent point. What sets you apart other than who you are? And I think people should judge you as to who you are, not how you look like. That's an excellent
Hmm.
point you made. So Patrick, segue into the area of law you practice in, right? And you said something that how tech and how being remote, in fact, it's more client centric approach. You're making it's not you're doing it for yourself. Part of it is, yes, that allows you to have a lifestyle which you want for yourself, to build the practice you want, but those both of those elements actually align well with what customer wants, to have an amazing user experience, so they can do it at, while sitting at their couch or while sitting at the dinner table, and they can take care of the whole process. So my question is that, uh, if we know that this makes customer lives easy, if we know that this improves the user experience, why don't we see this as widely adopted practice in the industry?
I think part of it has to do with a lot of these technology tools still require a pretty high level understanding of how it all works. So I think a lot of the technology tools,
Mhm.
although some are very simple, a lot of them are not.
Hmm.
And figuring out how they all connect together can be difficult. A lot of attorneys, the issue is that not that they don't want to use technology or wouldn't use technology, that they don't know where to start.
Mhm.
They don't even know what is the entry point. A lot of attorneys still don't have, let's say, a website. They don't even know what the first step
Yeah.
is. Um, they have built out systems for have operated in a way and they're comfortable in
Mhm.
that. And so I think a lot of the, I guess, reason why there hasn't been widespread adoption is not even out of lack of desire
Mhm.
to change. It's a I don't know how to.
Hmm.
I don't know where to go. I'm overwhelmed because it can be.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I would say I'm a fairly advanced tech
Yeah.
user when it comes to being an
Yeah.
attorney. And even for me, sometimes um, to get everything to work in
Yeah.
alignment is difficult. So I think um, for there to be more widespread adoption, tech tools have to become easier to use.
Yeah.
I think that law firms will need to start hiring support staff
Mhm.
that are just legal technology specialists.
Hmm.
That's all they do is that
Yeah.
piece for the firm.
That's an excellent point, because, firstly, as you said, the schools, law schools don't teach that side of it. New lawyers have no idea. But also, they generally are not very technology, friendly per se. They haven't been trained that way, and it doesn't come naturally to them. So that's why that, resistance exists, or the gap exists in the market, where they're not 100% comfortable running a purely remote law practice, or running a purely tech enabled practice, I would say, in a true sense, right? That you're removing paper processes, you're removing redundancies, right? And I think the point you made is, like, tech has that power, right? And I can foresee that, the firms uh, will eventually need that in-depth, tech enabler, who can make each and every piece of the puzzle, make it work for them in the seamless process, right? um, so yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. So Patrick, let's shed some light towards about, practice areas, right? Now, first of all, that, can you only do personal and business bankruptcies in your own state, or can you also do it, across US? Number one question. And number two is that, in terms of inflation, and in terms of like, we are seeing a huge wave of inflation, right? Everything is getting expensive. Are you seeing that there's a growing trend in consumer and business bankruptcies currently?
So when it comes to bankruptcy's a odd duck. Is that the second people find themselves in initial financial distress, they don't just rush to file bankruptcy.
Hmm.
It's not their rarely is it their first um, solution. Many people exhaust a lot of different solutions, which includes just ignoring the
Yeah.
problem for typically 2 to 3 years. So, although we
Hmm.
have seen a spike, particularly in the US, of all time high credit card
Yeah.
debt, raising inflation, student loans haven't started again
Hmm.
here. um, um, but once those things all hit, it remains to be seen when will be the uptick. They've been saying that bankruptcy is going to explode.
Yeah.
We have yet to see that. Has it picked up slightly over the last, let's say, 2 to 3 months of people
Yeah.
inquiring, asking about it? Sure. Um, but that's just kind of the initial phase. In terms of your other question of how can you have a multi-state bankruptcy
Yeah.
practice? Um, in the U.S., bankruptcy is in the federal courts. In each federal court, you need to be licensed to practice there.
Got it.
So although it's all federal law,
Yeah.
um, like I'm licensed in Minnesota and
Yes.
Nebraska, so I can do bankruptcies in both those states.
Both the.
Even though I physically live in Minnesota, I can still do bankruptcies in Nebraska, and that's still about 95% of my practice.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. So, and can you also like, help in cross-border bankruptcies? So let's say like, the corporation is also running in Canada, or that's a multi-country or multi-territory corporation, right? Is those jurisdiction boundaries like, kind of, then, or you partner up with like, different attorneys to kind of complete that process?
You could. It's like anything. If let's say you have a legal issue, let's say in Canada where you
Yeah.
are, you could always co-counsel.
Co-counsel. Okay. Got it. Okay. Okay.
Hmm.
Awesome.
Hmm. If there is an issue.
Now, so bankruptcy is generally a route. What are your thoughts about like, we generally the other products which are sold as like, debt consolidation, like, consolidation, or the other
Mm,
financial
mm.
products which are kind of sold as an alternate or as a kind of free, because there's a
Yeah. Yeah.
very very like, in fact, I would say it's a very predatory market in terms of like
Mm,
people going after that audience. So what are your thoughts about that?
yeah. Oh, I have some thoughts about that. That's a great question. No one ever asked me about that. Um, so here, you'll hear on the radio, there's a lot of money spent in the what I call anti-bankruptcy market,
Yeah.
where it's like bankruptcy will destroy your life.
Yeah.
Come here. We'll only slightly destroy your
Slightly.
life. Um, a lot of those debt consolidation workout companies don't do what they say they're going to do.
Hmm.
End up being more expensive than bankruptcy because their fees are percentage based.
Mm-hmm.
They're not flat. They're not flat
They're not
fees,
flat fees.
and creditors are not required to participate.
Mm-hmm.
So some creditors say we never work with those companies at all.
Mm-hmm.
Some creditors wait until they've gotten judgments. Then they'll say, okay, now we'll negotiate because we've tacked on attorney's fees and what have
Yeah.
you. So those solutions are imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, they're pretty predatory, and they only work really well for a small segment of the population. Many people could replicate those same outcomes, actually, probably better
Better
outcomes
outcomes.
if they just did it themselves.
Yeah. Okay. So,
And that's what I tell people.
no,
Do it yourself and save thousands of dollars.
save $1,000, and I think
Yep.
like I'm a big believer. Generally, yes, fear-based selling works, and that's why brands use fear-based
Mm,
selling. But generally, in bankruptcy, fear-based selling is used to spread misinformation as well. right? As you
Yep.
said it, that not in every case. In fact, in a lot of cases, bankruptcy is one of the best routes to go, and to offload everything, right? And I think
Yep.
I met a lot of smart. I think this is another misconception, and I want you to talk about it. That bankruptcy is
Mhm.
something wrong thing to do. I met
Mm.
a very successful business person, and he's like, "Yeah, I've been bankrupt a couple of times, right?" He said it so
Yeah.
proudly, and he's very successful in what business he's doing currently, right?
Mhm.
So I think there's a misconception in terms of when people hear this B word, they are like,
Mhm.
"Oh, let's
Yeah.
scared away. We're down the ship. The
Yeah.
Titanic has
Yeah.
sunk, right?"
Yeah.
Whereas no,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Bankruptcy means that Titanic has excess weight, which it it offloaded it, so it can
Yeah.
continue to like say. So shed some light around this narrative of
Yeah.
bankruptcy is so bad.
Mm. I'm gonna stick with the Titanic analogy because I love it. I tell people, that a lot of times what they're doing is just throwing gold bars on the sinking Titanic.
Mm,
And if they just took a couple of those gold bars and filed for bankruptcy, then their future gold bars they'd be able to keep. Um, the big bad B word is what I call it. You throw out bankruptcy, and even attorneys that don't practice in the area that are, let's say, litigators, they hear the bankruptcy word and uh oh, disaster, and I don't use fear based
yeah.
marketing for bankruptcy. It's very common practice here that some attorneys will do mass mailing. Like if you
Mm,
get
mass
sued,
spelling.
they'll send you a mass mailer saying, "You've been sued.
Yeah.
Oh, fear. Oh, your wages are going to get
Yeah.
garnished.
Yeah.
Fear." And how I do it is more from like, this is some kind of, it's traumatic
Mm, mhm.
and this is
Yeah.
chaos and there's pain in this. And how do we help you navigate this very traumatic, painful experience with ease, with grace, with compassion?
Mhm.
Um, it's not fear, because if you tell someone this is to be feared, what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to seek information to confirm that bias.
Confirm.
If you tell people this will be painless, this will be easy, what do?
Yeah.
They seek out information to confirm that bias. And so, we do a lot of messaging around kind of language like you're going to be taken care of, supported.
Mhm.
Um, and we understand it. We acknowledge how you feel. That's very different. That's not traditionally how attorneys approach situations. They go, "This is horrible,"
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then the person goes, "Yes, this is horrible, and we're gonna make this experience horrible together." And I just um, don't buy that.
Yeah. I think I appreciate that alternative narrative you're trying to create around it. Um,
Hmm.
there's immense trauma associated with when you're going through something like bankruptcy or you're being in that situation. So throwing more fear at that person when you know that it's not healthy for them and you're creating more stress for them, I think as an attorney you're doing almost a favor to them, and making this process seamless and like as less of a stress, like you're pretty much your job. You have two things: either you can increase your stress or you can decrease your stress, and
Yeah,
just by how you handle it, right? So I think you made
yeah.
an
It's how
excellent point there.
it's how you show up.
Mm,
It's how you act and behave. It's do you engage in also the dialogue, the conversation, in saying you are the victim,
mhm,
or empowering the person to say, this is your life, this is a solution. And those are fine, can be fine distinctions. And when you're transparent with people and you support them, it builds trust. They are more engaged in the process because it's not this scary other thing. And they see it as a solution for their own life. And I think that's really where the legal profession should go
mhm.
and is headed, and even the use of let's say AI or technology really is to free up, unleash the attorney to do human things.
Yeah, leash and like let you do, let attorney do human things and less, like as I said, procedural things. So, or even in human
Yeah,
things, attorney can focus on advice, more strategic like
yeah,
things, instead of like more more procedural, or even just like as simple as filling out the forms, right? um,
yeah.
Patrick, amazing information, great conversation as always. People want to get in touch with you. So first of all, I hope that people don't want to get in touch with you if they don't go through it, right? But but but
Yeah,
but, but, but
yeah,
you need to run a business too. So if
yeah,
someone is going through the challenge and they need to have questions around bankruptcy, around any topic around that, predominantly like when they're having these financial challenges, right? How they can get hold of you.
yeah. So there's a couple. So I wear a couple different hats. One of them is a bankruptcy attorney. I do that through my practice, Patino King. Our website's very easy. It's patinoking.com. Very active on LinkedIn. It's a really good place to get a hold of me. I'm also own and operate a law firm and attorney coaching consulting business called Newfangled. You can find me at newfangled.legal. I'm always happy to talk with attorneys about different ways of practicing or developing their practice or transforming their practice. So yeah, I I love doing this stuff. As you know, I love having these conversations. So yeah, if anyone wants to connect, feel free to reach out, and I'm always happy to talk.
It's like, we should change the name of the podcast, as you said, like, two bearded guys podcast, right? That makes it perfect. Uh,
Yeah.
so guys, you can reach out to Patrick at Patino King, like, .com, right? .com, right, Patrick?
Yep.
PatinoKing dot
Yep.
com, or you can find, like, Patrick Patino on LinkedIn. He has a very distinctive face. I'm sure you won't gonna miss. And I don't think so. There are probably more Patrick Patinos on LinkedIn, so I'm sure you'll be able to find him. Our show notes, wherever you're listening to, will make sure the bio and the website link is in the comment section and the bio section. If you have any comments, if you have any questions, go in the comment section. We'll monitor that. We'll forward it to Patrick to make sure he gets it, or you can reach out to him directly if you have any of these related questions. Both of them. If you're a lawyer and you need to have a conversation with him on how he's running his practice, like, being remote and like enabling and playing on automation and tech. And on the other side, like, if you need bankruptcy help, right, personal or business, Patrick can be your guy, right? Thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Patrick.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Cheers.